What's going on, everybody? On today's episode of My AR Ain't Working, we've got feeding issues. So my buddy brought in his AR and it's not feeding right. When I say it's not feeding right, he'd shoot. Sometimes the round would go in the chamber. Sometimes it'd get hung up before it got in the chamber. So failure to feed. Now, when it comes to failure to feed, there's a few things that could be the issue. One thing that's really common is magazines. If you have an old magazine, or if like it's old aluminum ones that are bent and it's not letting the round come in there smoothly, or if it's not seating deep enough to where your bolt's not picking it up right, magazines can usually be the culprit when it comes to feeding issues. So get good magazines and you usually fix that problem. Another problem I've seen is the feed ramps. And this is not so common as some of the others, but sometimes your feed ramps aren't right. With certain barrels, you have to have certain upper receivers. And later on, I'll do a video on that and I'll show you diagrams because it's hard to explain. But with the pictures, it makes perfect sense. So maybe later on, I'll make a video of that. So I'll show you guys that one. The problem with today's AR, though, is in tuning. When it comes to tuning ARs, I can do a whole separate video, and I'll do a whole separate video on how to tune an AR, what to look for, good ways to do it, all that fun stuff. Having different weight buffers is a good one. I always keep extra buffers on hand at different weights to help tune customers' ARs, so get them done right. And I will say from the factory, a lot of ARs come over-gassed. And what I mean by over-gas is more gas coming back to cycle the bolt than's needed. With over-gassed ARs, they work. And that's why manufacturers do it. Because you get enough gas back there that it's going to cycle everything. Everything's going to work. It may be a little harder on the bolt. You may get a little extra gas in the face. But it works. If it's under-gassed, like in today's issue, it won't work. When it comes to gas and everything like that, let's look at this gas tube. In gunsmithing school, they'll tell you, or they told me anyway, that the shorter the gas tube, the more gas is going back to the block. Back to the bolt. Excuse me. Been a long day. I've been running around. Anyway, so on this one, this is a mid-length gas tube, right? So the bullet travels down the barrel. You're not getting gas to go back and cycle the firearm until the bullet passes the gas port. So this little hole right there. Some of these holes in barrels are bigger than others. So that's another thing you want to look out for. And make sure, obviously, the gas block is lined up on that hole properly too. But we'll talk all about that later. When the bullet passes here, gas goes back up and back to your bolt, makes everything cycle, right? So if you have a pistol length gas tube, which in this AR that I'm talking about, that I have the issues with, has a pistol length gas tube. So the gas port is right here. So when the bullet gets to here, the gas starts coming back and going back that way. So you got all this length right here to build up pressure to make your bolt and everything cycle. After your bolt cycles and everything, and the bolt's still in here, if the bolt's already gone back, that extra gas is just going to come out this tube into your magazine, into your face, all that stuff. So if you're watching a video of somebody shooting and there's a lot of smoke coming out of the ejection port cover area, that's because it's over-gassed. Again, in gunsmithing school, they'll tell you the shorter the gas tube, the more gas that you're going to get into your bolt. So with my situation I got today, I told you it's a pistol length gas tube, right? You should be getting over-gassed, right? Wrong. Here is why. You also have something called dwell time. And dwell time, depending on who you talk to, what definition you look up, dwell time is basically, in my simple terms, the amount of time that gas is pushing back on your bolt and cycling everything. So in this case, your bullet passes here. You have about 6 inches of space here to where your bullet is pushing back before extra gases just escape out and kind of go everywhere. That the main portion of this gas is going to be pushing that bullet, obviously, and that little bit that comes out of that hole is going through this tube, and then after it gets out of the barrel, then the gases are going to path of least resistance, right? They're going to come out the barrel instead of going up that little tube. So you got to also think gas tube does make a big difference, but you also got to look at dwell time also. With this carbine length, it's about 2 inches shorter. So 2 inches back, you got 8 inches of dwell time easily that you could say is pushing back on your bolt. And again, sometimes you don't need that much pressure. Sometimes you do. Just depends on how you run your AR and a lot of different stuff. Ammo comes into effect too, or comes into factor. So why is my pistol length gas tube undergassed on this AR? Well, let's look at this AR and you'll pick it up real quick. This monstrosity, I mean, this tiny thing is why we don't have enough pressure. The gas port in the barrel, I took the gas block off and looked at the hole in the barrel is actually smaller than the one I just showed you. So one, it's got a small gas port inside the barrel, and then two, you only got about 2 inches of dwell time. Now, obviously, there's going to be more pressure here, like when the round goes off, right? There's going to be more pressure, but more of those gases are going to escape out the front here than are going to be going to the back. Now, the way this AR is designed, it'll work perfectly fine. However, we have another thing going on here. We have one of these folding, collapsible stocks, which adds a little bit of length in here. And to make up for that length between our buffer and our bolt, you have this little extension right here. And this little extension goes in the back of your bolt like so. Okay, so that makes your bolt longer. That'll work with your stock buffer. And normally, on any given day with a manufactured firearm that's probably a little overgassed anyway, this will work just fine. Now, let's take a little step back here. I did a little science experiment, and I'll show you the weights here in a second. But your standard buffer weight right here, if you go up to the next step, which is H1, I got H1, H2 here, right? To go up to tune these things is about an ounce of weight. So this one is this one is your stock one. This is an ounce heavier, and this is 2 ounces heavier than your stock one, right? So we're only talking an ounce. We're not talking like we're putting in, 6 ounces or something crazy to tune an AR, right? It's very simple. And another cool little fun fact is there's a roll pin right in there. If you knock that little black roll pin out inside this thing, you hear it rattling around. Those are weights. So you can take those weights out and you can fine tune it as you see fit. And nice to have a little scale like I'll show you here in just a second. So to get this thing to run properly, what I did is I swapped out the bolts with this light bolt carrier group right here. And then this light bolt carrier group works perfectly in it. So if your AR worked good before, and this was my little science experiment that I did today, how much do you think this thing weighs? I can tell you what, it's about the exact same difference between this and this. So if we didn't have the folding stock on here, this AR would run perfectly. Let me show you these weights and then I'll let you go here. All right, so my handy dandy little mail scale. All right, so let's start with our stock buffer. We're at 2.9 on the stock buffer right there. We're going to go to the H1 and we're at 3.8. So again, 1 ounce difference about, roughly. Our H2, 4.5 ounces. All right, now let's look at our stock bolt carrier group. And we're at 11.7. All right. Our light bolt carrier group, 8.3. So roughly, you know, let's just ballpark 3 ounces, right? Now let's look at our little extension here. Let's see how much that thing weighs. Oh, 3 ounces. So 3 ounces was enough to mess up the cycle of operations on this AR. So when you're tuning an AR, just know that weights matter. And yeah, like I said, I'll do another video on how to tune stuff. There's all kinds of cool little tricks when it comes to tuning an AR that make it run so much smoother and reliable and everything like that. So stay tuned for that. And remember, well, Uncle Ben said, with great power comes great responsibility. Be a safe, responsible gun owner out there. All right, catch you next time.